All right. How's everyone's week been?
It's been all right. I've been super busy. I mean, at the time of recording, right now, U.S. Nationals is going on, and Canadian Nationals is about to start next week. At the time that this podcast release, it'll probably be closer to Worlds. It'll be quite a bit down the road. But for me, it's been a busy week because I've had meetings and stuff like that for getting specifically one athlete I have competing in nationals, Malik. We've had a meeting with his game day handler, Byron, for getting him ready. So I've been really busy. I put together like a scouting report and stuff like that for Byron, and we kind of talked through his day, and he's in a big battle for placing in the 120 kilo junior class. So that's been a big part of my week. And then the other part of my week has been with American Nationals going on. I work for Powerlifting Now and Strength Now, and I've been just busy doing content and stuff like that, getting everything kind of prepared. At the time that this episode goes out, it'll be pretty far in the future, but we got I think 11 athletes from the Strength Now coaches team kind of like competing between like the coaches.
Sweet.
And part of my job right now is creating a graphic for all the ones that place, so we have something to post on Monday after Nationals is done. So I've been following along really closely with PA Nationals and just making sure that I keep the graphics updated so that I'm not in like a mad dash on Sunday night to finish everything to have it ready for Monday morning. I'm just trying to kind of keep it like updated as different athletes go.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty busy week for you.
Yeah, it's been.
Are you still training with all that?
Yeah. I've gone in my 4 days. I have like an optional upper body day today that I'm planning on going to do, but we'll see. It's a fun day, so I want to go do it, but I got some other obligations and stuff like that after this, and depending on how long they take, I might axe the optional day or I might go do it, but we'll see.
Yeah. Nice.
What
I had
about
a pretty decent week. Just just coaching. Did a meet day plan for one of my athletes, also to Byron. He's going to be handling him at Nats, so I'm pretty excited for that. Training was hard this week, but back to where I was kind of like pre-surgery. Blacked out a bit on bench yesterday. All that neck pressure.
You still have all your teeth?
Yeah, we're good. And we're alive. Body's a little cooked, but we're good.
Nice. Yeah. I think the general theme is Nats is coming up for Canada here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which really
this episode will come out this episode will go like 10 weeks after. But...
Same here. Nats coming up. Got a bunch of athletes prepping for Nats. I got a lot of people in the bench category, which makes sense as I'm coaching the bench team. But yeah, hoping everyone does well and pretty excited for that. I went down to Sweden over at the IPF headquarters to do some cool stuff there. And it was a really cool seeing the Alaco headquarters. Sorry, not IPF headquarters, Alaco headquarters. Fun fact I learned about Alaco. Do you guys know what Alaco means?
Nope.
Electronic kitchen equipment.
Because they started off with more like houseware type stuff before they got into more plates and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I saw like the first waffle maker they made, and that's how it started, I guess.
Waffle maker. And then they have like the super heavy mugs and stuff like that.
I've
continued on from their houseware, but they used to be waffle makers. I knew that. I didn't know that Alaco meant electronic houseware equipment or kitchenware. I did not know that, but I do know that that's how they started as a company. So the topic for today is going to be game day coaching.
And I think it's something we all have experience in, and something every powerlifting coach will find themselves doing at some point. And I think there's a pretty big discrepancy about being a good coach, writing programs, and then being there for game day. Like, we got some athletes or some coaches that just do game day coaching. That's their thing. And we got some coaches that just do coaching. Of course, both those people will find themselves in each role, but they're quite different. And we'll give a little rundown of what some of these qualities are, some stuff to look out for, and things like that. So first things we're going to talk about is going to be the difference between the type of handling situations you're going to be in. So the first thing I'm going to think about here is you got athlete one. He's competing in a local meet here. And what's kind of their psyche? What kind of things are they going to be looking out for? What kind of things should we as coaches be setting them up for? And athlete B, where he's going to be at nationals looking to qualify for worlds, or he's already qualified for worlds and he is at a national level looking to place. So I'll start it off here with Max, if you want to take it away. What's some of the things that you would be looking for when you're leading an athlete in for their first competition as a coach, as a game day coach?
Yeah. So first of all, like, I have like way more experience with like the athlete one, the athlete that's just, trying to PR their total, maybe go into their first meet, do a local competition, have fun, learn the sport. It isn't in a head-to-head battle. I've only actually ever coached in like one head-to-head situation before at provincials, I think 3 years ago now, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I've only ever had like one other athlete get into one of those like head-to-head situations now with my athlete Malik that's going into nationals this year. And I won't actually be like handling him on the day. The Team Alberta coaches are handling him because I ain't got the money to go out to PEI or Nova Scotia or wherever nationals is this
crazy.
year. So we're out east. Yeah, the flights.
You can go to Europe for the same price as you can go to PEI.
Yeah. So nationals is expensive this year, and I only had one athlete in it, so definitely could not justify that cost. But I think one of the bigger differences between the two, in my opinion, is the scouting report. When you have an athlete that's like basically just going to, have fun, PR their total, have a good day, isn't in a head-to-head battle, you focus mostly on that singular athlete's performance. When you have an athlete that's in a head-to-head battle, not only do you do the same things you do for the singular athlete to focus on their performance, but you actually start looking at the other athletes' performances and what they're capable of, what their top end is, how many average attempts they make. Had to burp, sorry.
All good.
What their best like squat, bench, and deadlift is. And you start taking like inventory on what advantages and disadvantages you have. I find that part of like handling very, very fascinating, and I would love to get more into that. I know like you are, Shia, like you've been like coaching on Team Canada and stuff like that, and you've gotten more into like the handling athletes that aren't even like yours as far as like online coaching going, and being like really like hyper focused in on those battles and like winning those battles, which is super, super cool. Just with the back and forth nature of my life right now, going back and forth between the US and Canada so much over the last few years, I haven't even been super involved in my own athletes handling. I've been passing it off to a lot of other coaches as of more recently, just because it's like, oh, if I'm in the US and I have like an athlete competing in Canada, I've just had to kind of pass the buck out of necessity. But once I've like settled into the US, I would like to focus more on handling. I have a printed off copy of Matt Gary's Game Day handling book here that I plan on fully reading one day. But I'll let CJ kind of like jump into like more of the stuff, but I would say when it comes to like athlete one and like the athlete that's just like going into their either first meet, a local meet, the athlete that isn't in a head-to-head battle, I find one of the things that I focus in on most is the athlete psychology. And I think this is important for like the head-to-head battle as well, but I think one thing that's like really, really important when it comes to like making sure that an athlete has a good day when you're handling them is knowing what kind of energy they need, right? Do they need somebody that's going to be like super hype and bring them up? Or are they going to be super hyped and super nervous? And do they need somebody that's like more calm and down to earth and going to like center them a little bit more? So understanding like what the athlete needs energy wise is definitely like a huge portion of like making sure that they have like a successful.
That's a great point.
Yeah, amongst many other preparation things, which I feel like CJ is like more qualified to talk about some of those things than I am. So I'll pass it over to CJ to talk about some things as far as that.
Yeah. I think I deal with quite a lot of that athlete too, where, there's a lot of head to head, and there's a lot of battles. So a lot of it comes down to preparation before the actual meet, right? We got to be scouting out people. We got to be knowing what the competition is going to be doing, and we got to be able to think about, what is their top end, right? And then we got to see where our athlete is at, right? And then come game day, I like to have conversations with the athlete prior to it, just talking about expectations and, what we're trying to achieve, going over goals, all of that sort of thing. And essentially creating a game day plan, right? And obviously this plan will change depending on the day that the athlete has, right? But having that kind of structure in place onto how this meet is going to run is a really good step, not just for you as the coach, but also for the athlete, for their peace of mind, right? Going into that meet day with the trust that, my coach knows what they're doing and I don't need to do anything but just lift. That's a really, really important aspect for a lot of these athletes, whether it's an athlete 1 or 2, whatever, right? But yeah, that is a really important aspect, and I think it really sets the tone for how the day is going to run. But yeah, I when I'm dealing with like that athlete 1, again, the thing is more so focused on making sure the athlete has a good experience, right? And they have fun, right? This is going to be their first meet, right? And we really want to make sure that they have a good experience so that they actually enjoy the sport and they're not dreading it, right? And then when it comes to that athlete 2 getting into the whole head-to-heads and stuff, it's a lot of pressure on you as a coach, I will say, especially once you get to that national level. And you have to make these decisions, and one slip up, one missed lift can cost you a title, right? So that is super important, and you got to be great with planning out your numbers, seeing what your competition is doing, right? But yeah, Arshia.
Yeah, all really great points there. I think the scouting point that you brought up is really key, especially when we're talking about. I guess for now we'll refer to athlete 1 as the local level meet, and then athlete 2 as the national/international. But for the athlete 2, I think that's really important. And Max, I really like what you said about asking what the athletes' arousal levels are, which I'll touch on that in a second here, which I think is really important as well. But something I want to start off by saying here is, as a game day coach, what is our role? our role as a game day coach is to make sure that the athlete has every possible thing that they need to perform their best. We need to set up everything that they need for them to be able to perform at their highest and at their best, which that could be having a good warm-up rack, having good timing in between their warm-ups, which we'll talk about as well, and having the correct numbers on the board. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be PBs and things like that. The number at the end of the day has to make sense. If it's 2.5 kilo more, that number has to make sense. It can't be 5 kilos more because that was the wrong number. Even if they hit it, to me, it's very important that that number was 2.5 kilos because that's what they needed to win. So to me, when I look at a scoreboard, it has to make sense. And yeah, that's our job as a coach, is to provide everything that the athlete needs to be able to perform at their best. I think when it comes down to it, and that's simply what it is. One thing that you brought up, CJ, that I thought was really good was the scouting aspect before and building that relationship with an athlete, especially if they're not your athlete. I've done this a lot is where I invite the other coaches to come and talk to me before a meet. So we're collaborating on this event that's about to take place. So it's me, the coach, and the athlete collaborating to make sure that this athlete has everything that they need again to be able to perform at their best. And I think it's really important to do that. It needs to be a collaboration of all three of us for this event to take place successfully. So that's really key. And for athlete one, how I like to look at it when I'm taking someone, and I think athlete one can be broken down to its own subcategories as well, because we have somebody that competes just as at local levels, but they've done like 12 local level meets. It's not the same as somebody that's going into their first meet. They just like to do local level meets. That's what they do. They have a busy schedule. It's all good. But when I'm thinking about someone that's just getting new into powerlifting, is what's their experience going to be like here? Like, I don't want to push this athlete that they're going to miss lifts and they're not going to like powerlifting. I think every powerlifter remembers their first meet. Even if you talk to someone that competed 30, 40 years ago, they remember that first meet quite vividly. And that experience really sets you up for every other meet. So we want to make sure that's a good experience and that's their introduction to powerlifting. So it's our job to make sure that they have a good time. So I think them having a good time takes over everything else. Obviously, they're going to hit PBs because every lift is going to be a PB. They haven't competed before. So having a good time, making sure they hit lifts and bringing that stress level down. One thing I wanted to touch on here, which was really good, and a lot of people don't usually talk about it either, is arousal levels. And I thought that was a really good point, Max. Ask your athlete especially if they're not your athlete, what's your arousal levels like? Like for me, I don't really like to be that hyped up. So if you're coaching me and you're giving me back slaps and yelling in my ear and things like that, that's probably not going to work out too well. I don't really like that. But if you see me there chatting, I probably not wearing headphones and talking to people about just stuff, or I'm just keeping to myself and just being calm, cool, I'm in the right headspace. But if I'm pacing back and forth, or you see me getting a little bit hyped up, that probably shows I'm a little bit nervous, and maybe you should have a chat with me. And that's how you know when I'm in my space. You're about to see some good lifts. So I think it's important to distinguish that. And it could also be the other way around. If you see an athlete that likes to get hyped up and they don't have their headphones in, they're not locked in, you need to know that they're not at that correct arousal level right now. And we need to set them up for that. So yeah, all really good points there. And I think Yeah, I think we covered a lot of good basics there. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to touch on there?
Yeah, I think to kind of like dive into like the athlete arousal, just a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And like looking at it from like the coach standpoint. So first of all, like I think if you ask an athlete that never competed before, like what they need on meet day, they probably don't know. There's
Yeah.
a level of like, I still feel like I'm kind of figuring it out, and I'm like almost like 20 meets in or whatever, right? And sometimes it's changing. Like sometimes you're the lifter that needs a little bit more hype. Sometimes you're the lifter that needs to lift a little more calm. I find generally I'm the lifter that needs to be like a little bit more calm and chillaxed and just like kind of like analytical on meet day, and that's where I kind of perform the best. But there's definitely been moments where I felt like I've needed more hype to like perform on the day, and it kind of depends, right? So
Yeah.
there's a level of like flexibility kind of going into it as a handler as well. But just kind of like speaking from the handling perspective, when I have an athlete that's like very, very new and maybe doesn't know what they need on meet day yet, I do find that I tend to have a lot of success default setting to being very like calm. And I think this comes from a place of like most new athletes on meet day are going to be nervous, and that's okay. But if as a handler, as a coach on meet day, you're also nervous, and nervous doesn't always come across as hype, but I think a lot of times a lot of new coaches will want to be like super hyped up because they're nervous. They're just as nervous to be handling as the athlete is to be competing, kind of thing. And the issue is those nerves kind of like mix together, and it can kind of culminate to a lot of like chaos on meet day. And I think one of the best things you can do as a new handler that's handling new athletes, and I think this is going to be the position that most handlers are going to be in. They're going to be, and I like your breakdown of athlete one. I was maybe looking at it a little bit differently. I was looking at like athlete one as like not in a head-to-head battle, and athlete two as in a head-to-head battle. And I think you're right. Across those two categories, you can have an athlete in a head-to-head battle that it's like they're like second or third meet and they don't have a lot of experience. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you can have an athlete not in a head-to-head battle that's done 25 meets and they're just like, super experienced and just like know what they're doing, right? But I think when you tend to look at things, the athlete that's not in the head-to-head battle is typically a little bit newer into the sport. And I think if the athlete you're handling is very green, they don't have a lot of experience, it's fair to say that they're going to be pretty darn nervous. They don't know what they're doing. They've never done this before. And that's okay. But I think one of the worst things you can do as a handler is be nervous with them. And when I look back and like when I used to do like a lot more handling and I had, like 11, 12 athletes in a meet that I was like all like handling like all at once kind of thing. And it's just like absolute chaos or whatever. I think one of the worst things I did that hurt my athletes' performances was be nervous myself. And part of that is just like when you're new to coaching, you're generally going to be nervous, right? And the more experience you get, the better you're going to be. But I think that's something that was like a big wake-up call for me. I can't remember where I heard it. Some podcast somewhere is like, hey, don't be nervous. Be calm, be cool, be collected, be confident. Because when you do that, you're going to encourage your athlete to do the same. You're going to calm down their nerves. You're going to create confidence out of them. So if you're new to handling, and you're handling an athlete that doesn't necessarily know what they respond best to from like an arousal level, I think one of the best things you can be is calm and confident. And then from there, as you kind of get different athletes that do have a little bit better of an idea of what they need, I think that's where you can kind of get into like the nuance of like, where does this athlete fall on the spectrum and what do they need? And then I think there's also a whole separate discussion about handling athletes that you personally online coach versus handling athletes that you don't, because those are going to be two separate categories. But just from the arousal standpoint, I think there's a level of like, if you have like a pretty good established relationship with an athlete, because you do online coach them, you do write their programming, you are having meetings with them, you are sending messages back and forth, and you do have a pretty established relationship, you're going to have a pretty strong understanding of what they need on meet day from training. And then if you don't coach the athlete on like a week to week basis, a month to month basis, and you're going into meet day and you're just handling them, I think that there is some more challenges of like, there's not as much of an established relationship. You're trying to establish that pretty quickly, and you're trying to figure out what they need pretty quickly. So you're kind of relying on what they're telling you, as well as like trying to figure it out pretty quickly on the fly. I think that goes for arousal. And I also think that goes for like understanding how their lifts move. I think there's like a big kind of gap between, okay, here's an athlete that I coach and I've seen them squat 30,000 times and I know exactly what it looks like when it's supposed to get hard, versus like an athlete you've never coached before. And it's like, we all know that there's the athletes that like their squat moves super fast until it doesn't. And then there's athletes that like their squat is like super slow and grindy and they could have done 2 more reps. And it's like, if you don't have like a super good coach's eye developed for being able to see that for different athletes, that can be kind of tough. And then I think there's also an added layer of challenge of like, if you coach that athlete, you have that eye developed for like, okay, this is how my athlete's lifts move, and I'm ready on meet day to make good calls based on that. And then on the other side of things, if you're handling an athlete that you don't coach and you haven't really seen them lift, you're trying to develop that like that coach's eye pretty fast on the fly. And I know I've heard like Matt Gary talk about that quite a bit, but because you guys do coach more athletes kind of in that category too, that like head-to-head battle where that like coach's eye is super, super pivotal for making sure that they have the best day possible in order to be able to win the competition. And you're typically handling a lot more athletes than I do that you don't coach in like an online coaching type of sense, where you aren't used to seeing their lifts as frequently. How do you guys kind of like get over that? Like, sorry, I kind of stole the question here, but I'm just like genuinely like interested from like my own coaching standpoint for like future reference. But because you guys do that more often than I do, how do you guys kind of like overcome that challenge of like not being as used to seeing a lifter lift and having to like develop that coach's eye really quickly for making sure they have a good day?
For me, I think that prior to the actual competition, I will literally tell the athlete, send me your videos during your lifts or during your prep, and tell me what you thought this was for an RPE or whatever, right? And that helps me understand what kind of lifter they are, right? In terms of that, are you a fast squatter? Are you a slow squatter? Right? And it helps me develop that kind of eye you were talking about, where, you know, I understand that, hey, this looks slow to me, but I know you have like 10, 15 kilos more in you. So I think that's a really good way to go about it, especially when you're working with someone that you do not actually coach, right? And then I think that transfers really well into the game day. That's kind of the way I go about it.
Yeah, pretty much more or less the same thing for me. Couple of things I'm going to touch on before that, Max, you said that I really liked before I answer that question was the nerves of the coach, which is completely fair. And especially as a new coach, you're probably there, your second or third, maybe first time coaching as well. So you're both going through this new experience together. How can you get experience without having your first time doing it? So it's completely normal for you to be nervous as well. But that being said, and something that I learned and I heard said a long time ago was one of the greatest characteristics a good coach has is being able to stay calm under pressure. So even if you are nervous or you think the athlete doesn't have it, you cannot show that, because as soon as you start showing that, you start showing that doubt, that's going to put doubt into the athlete as well. You have to be able to stay calm under pressure. You need to instill complete and utter belief into that athlete that this can happen, this is going to go down, and you got this. So staying calm under pressure, I would say, is probably one of the most important characteristics that a game day coach can have.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was really good. And what was the other thing? Right. Sorry, Max, what was your question? Oh, the scouting process. Right.
Well, no. Sorry,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like if you haven't handled an
Yeah.
athlete before,
Right.
like, and
Yeah.
you haven't seen that lifter. Sorry, you're
Yeah.
handling it. You're handling an athlete where you don't coach them. How do you
Right.
develop that coach's eye to have the best idea of like what they're going to be capable of on
Yeah.
midday? So, yeah.
Yeah, great question. So I've been in this situation for probably over 200 athletes, and I've been fortunate enough to be a head coach on Team Canada and coach the Canadian team on multiple occasions now. And I think the way we can do this, and the way and how they should start, how it starts for me, is as soon as I get the list for my team, let's say the bench press team, as soon as that list gets sent out, communication starts right away. So that process of building that relationship and getting to know the athlete starts right away. It's a little bit of a challenge for a team like the bench press team. We have a really big bench press team. I coached over 80 people last year at Bench Press Worlds. So developing that relationship is a challenge. Let's say for something like the open world, if you're coaching 16 people, you can do that quite well. But even with our bench press team, I'm completely dedicated to, I invite everyone to send me videos. Let's start that process right away. I invite the coaches in. I invite them to jump on a call with me. Let me know what you think. Tell me everything. Let me know how your sets moved. Let me know what you were like, what kind of what your programming looks like. And some athletes are different than others. Some don't want to know what you're putting in. Some like to have that conversation. Like, I have an athlete where if he comes out and he tells me that we're jumping 15 kilos on bench and he's confident, he doesn't even question it, I know that's happening. And he's a very strong athlete. And when he tells me that and he shakes his head, I know what to put on the bar. So everyone's a little bit different. You have to have that conversation, and that relationship building process is it's really important. And for something like the bench press team, we don't have that long to build that, because we have our nationals, and then bench worlds happens more or less 2 months after. So that process needs to happen right away. So as soon as I get the list of the team, I email the team. I say, welcome to the team, and let's start working together. Let's start building this collaboration and work together. Message me as much as you would like. You have my WhatsApp. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're not coached, let me know if you have any programming questions and stuff like that. If you're not coached, it's quite impressive that you made it on the team here. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions that way. Or I invite the coaches as well. Message me, let me know, and things like that. And yeah, I think starting that process as soon as you can is the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's really, really important to, develop that know your athlete kind of model, right? And really develop, that rapport with the people that you're going to coach, right? Because at the end of the day, you have essentially nothing to go off of if you do not start building that relationship. And the sooner the better, right? At the end of the day, it's going to build that trust. You're going to get an idea of how that lifter is going to lift, and you're going to get an idea of how that lifter wants to be game day coached.
Yeah, and to add to that, I don't think it's going to be something that you're going to learn on the day. So if you didn't
Exactly.
take care of that process beforehand, you're going to be in a lot of trouble when you start having that conversation. You say something you shouldn't have, and now the athlete's panicking because that's not the way they operate. They tell you 10 kilos, you question it, and now they're panicking. Or you tell them 10 kilos and they don't want to hear that. So you need to have these conversations, and man, especially for something you mentioned, like the eye, like the coach's eye for the bar speed, because it moving fast isn't really always an indicator that it moved good. Fast doesn't always mean good. It could move fast, but that's all they had. So these conversations need to be had.
Yeah, I feel very affirmed in hearing you guys say that. And I'll kind of jump into a little bit of background here. I don't mean to throw any shade for anybody I kind of reference, and I won't say any names, but I recently listened to Ronnie and Matt Gary's podcast on Two White Lights. Our boy Ronnie.
Shout out, Ronnie.
Also a guest on Powerlifting Now this month. His video is also phenomenal. But the podcast on Two White Lights is free for anybody wanting to go listen. And they were talking about some pretty high level like game day coaching stuff. And this was one thing that was kind of mentioned and brought up by Steve to specifically Matt, kind of both of them, but specifically Matt. He's like, hey, you're coaching a lot of people that like, you don't coach, right? Like you don't online coach, but your hand, and that's all that Matt Gary does. Matt Gary just does game day handling. So everybody he coaches is people that he's like, quote unquote, like never seen lift before, right? Or doesn't have as much experience watching lift as like somebody's programming coach, right? So he's going to ask like, how do you develop that? He's like, well, I want to start seeing people's lifting as soon as possible. If it's the day of, it's too late. And I think that was a really good point. And he was kind of like breaking down how he has like forms he sends out to every athlete weekly. Yeah. And part of that is like, show me your top sets for the week because I want to be watching you lift on like a week-to-week basis. And then there's also a level of like years and years of watching different lifters lift. You just get like a better coach's eye over years. I think that's true with programming coaching too. The more you watch people lift, the better you get at watching people lift. Like it's not a crazy concept. But I feel very affirmed in hearing you guys say that because that's like my experience with having like my athletes get coached by other coaches hasn't necessarily been that of having that coach reach out to ask to see their lifts leading up to. They've been kind of just like waiting for the day of. And I know like something that I did kind of in preparation for Malik going to nationals coming up soon here is when I had the meeting with his game day coach as the programming coach, I took the incentive to say, hey, Malik is going to send you all of his like prominent lifts in this prep for you to watch because I want you to get eyes on his lifts. So I kind of took a little bit more of a forefront of like offering that in the very aggressive way of like, this is what's happening. Obviously you can't force the coach to watch those lifts, but Byron, who's handling Malik, he was very thankful for that. And I have trust that he's going to watch that. But that's just something that I've kind of like noticed a little bit over the years is like, that's becoming a little bit more commonplace. And I think it should, because I think that's going to lead to like better results for the athlete on meet day. If you've seen a handful of their like hard sets leading into the competition. So, as the programming coach, I kind of knew when all of those hard sets occurred. So in the group chat I had with Byron and Malik, I specifically said like, hey, Malik, you're going to send this lift from this day, this lift from this day, this lift from this day, for Byron to see.
That's so really I thought doing it.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of neat. Like, I obviously took the incentive to do that from the programming coach side of things, but I do
Yeah.
think, like, from the game day handling side of things, not that I'm in that position to say, but I think if I was in that position in the future, I would like to take the like initiative to try to get that. So it's reaffirming to hear that both of you guys do it that way.
Yeah.
Especially you, Arshia, being
Yeah,
I am the head coach of Team Canada for certain teams.
you better be doing that.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. And yeah, likewise, I had a good chat with Matt Gary last weekend, and he also reassured me on what you just mentioned. And I think it's
Just another kind of side question is
Yeah.
having those conversations with Matt, did that change your approach to how you're going to gather that data in the future? Or is like, did you get anything out of those conversations that you're going to like use specifically in this sense of like the data gathering, like going into meet day? Did he change anything you're
Yeah.
going to do or like give you any new ideas?
Yes. Just the importance of it, honestly, is just building that relationship and making sure that we all work as a team, because it was mostly reassurance, and it was really good to hear that from him. And yeah, it was good, because at the end of the day, this is like the bench press team. That's my team, and I'm taking my team to the world stage. So at the end of the day, if something happens, it's going to be my ass that's on the line. So I need to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to put everyone in the best possible position that they can be to hit PBs. So that was really
Right.
good to hear, and I really liked talking shop with him. It was really good.
Yeah. Talking about this, it kind of gets me thinking of, I personally don't have any system in place in terms of gathering this initial data. I wonder if that would be a great idea, because the way I go about it now is simply just reaching out to the athlete and asking these questions.
Mhm.
But I wonder if developing more of a systematic approach to it would be a lot better.
I will say
Yeah.
that's kind of like, oh, sorry, Archie, I didn't mean to cut you off. Listening to Matt
No
Gary
worries.
talk about like how he does things. Obviously, like I'm not in that position. I hope to maybe be once I have a little bit more stability in my life where I feel like I can be, and I don't have like a wedding coming up, and I'm not like waiting on immigration and all this kind of stuff. I was talking to Ronnie, and I was like, I'd like to be like a Team USA like handling coach one day for like some of their world's teams and stuff like that. And listening to Matt Gary, I was kind of like, if I am ever in that position, I think it would be useful to have some systems for collecting that data beyond just asking. So I'm glad you brought that up, CJ. Sorry, Archie, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No worries. I was just gonna talk about the systems. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great leeway into it. Yeah. So the system, again, for me, it starts right away when the team gets announced. I message everyone, welcome them onto the team, and then from there, every week to 2 weeks, I start sending more emails. So week 2 email would be something like, make sure you're getting ready for all these things, make sure your hotels are booked and things like that, because that's just a different side of it when you're going to an international event. Some people might have never gone into it. So it's some non-lifting stuff that you need to remind the athletes that needs to be in check, because again, it's my team that's going there, and I want to make sure everybody has a place to stay, and they know like how to get to the venue and things like that. These are all important things that can be stressing an athlete out and things like that. So along with that, I send them out a form. It has a series of questions in there, one of them being like your arousal levels, tell me about it, tell me how training's been going, any sort of injuries and things like that. And obviously what's important to you can be different than what's important to me. So you would tailor that towards what you would be looking for as a coach and the information that you want as a coach. But then as we get closer to the competition, these questions kind of change, and then the updates kind of change, and it gets more tailored towards the game day. So that's how I go about it, more or less. And every time I do a new go into a new competition, some things get changed, and I learn about some stuff, and I make sure to input that into the new questionnaire. But for me, so far it's been a pretty simple Google questionnaire that I send out, and they fill it in, and then the updates are in there. And then something else that I would do is about 2 to 4 weeks out, I start inviting them in on Zoom calls. And if they have a personal coach or a programming coach, I want them there as well, because they know a lot of information about the athlete that would be important to me as well. So I want to start building that collaboration and that plan as soon as that happens, so that I can make sure the team is ready to go.
I think I really liked something you said there at the very start about like the athletes' accommodations. I think this is something that's probably more pertinent to like the athlete, to the head-to-heads, the international competitions, the people that are traveling for their meets, opposed to like more of the local level lifters, because typically it's in their backyard kind of thing. But I do think that there's a level of like preparation for being ready for whatever the circumstances of meet day are is a very important factor for game day handling that we often don't think about. And this can be a variety of different things. Like I said, like if the athlete doesn't have a place to stay and they're like stressing to figure this out like very last minute, that's probably not going to be conducive to like really good like meet day performance. I think another thing that pertains to, I think, like every athlete is their food they're going to be eating on meet day.
Yes.
That's something I talk about with like every athlete in our like game day handling kind of like pre-meet calls, is like, what is your plan for food on the day? And some people have done it enough that they have it figured out. But I think there's also a level of like, for you, Arshia, coaching like international teams and stuff like that, it's like, what's your plan for food on the day? If they're like, oh, rice, it's like, okay, where are you getting it from? And it's like
that's happened.
Or like PB and J sandwiches is what I usually eat. It's like, okay, like where are you getting?
You don't have that.
Are you ready for like whatever the local cuisine is? Like for myself, like I find that I really thrive off of like Uncle Ben's jasmine rice bags and mixing like honey into it. That's kind of like my go-to on meet day. But part of the reason I've chosen this, and this isn't like, I'm not part of any international, like national teams where I'm going to international competitions. But if I ever was, or if I'm even just like traveling to Vancouver or PEI or somewhere where I'm going to a competition and I'm having to travel, I know that I can have the food that I want to have because I can pack it in my bag with me and bring it, right? Whereas like something like a PBJ sandwich, I guess maybe you could, but you probably aren't going to pack something like that. So I think also factoring into like whatever your meet day plan is like making sure that it's something that can be replicated no matter what competition you're in is a big part of like meet day planning from the athlete side of things, but from the coach side of things, of like preparing the athlete to be ready for any competition, making sure that their food is something that can be done no matter what competition they're in. Another thing, and this has been a mistake on my end. Now, I wasn't specifically handling this athlete, but I was doing the pre-meet call where I was preparing them. And something I think is worth looking at is flight size. Because some athletes take very long rest periods in between their sets. CJ taking an hour to warm up for bench press.
Hey, I was on the toilet.
But I think athletes that have like very slow paces to their workouts can be very shocked by very fast flights, right? Or very fast days. Whereas the opposite, like an athlete that that is used to like very fast training can be shocked by a little bit like slower days, right? I think there's a level of like from the programming coach, maybe if you can identify that far enough out, which sometimes you don't get the schedules soon enough for it to really matter. And sometimes it's better to just like focus on whatever's working, but that's a whole separate conversation. But I think at least in the pre-meet call, being able to identify you're in a single flight, double flight, or triple flight session, and the day you're in a flight with this many lifters, you're going to have a fast day or a slow day, and being able to identify that and set the expectation for the athlete to understand that is important, even when it comes to picking numbers. And to give an example of kind of like a fault that I had at one point in time, I went through a pre-meet meeting with an athlete. I set expectations based on a very regular meet day. And then on meet day, as I was watching her compete, I realized she was in a single flight session. And this athlete trained turtle slow, like very, very slow. And she, like, her meet was done in like an hour and a half flat, which is faster than any training day she's ever had. And not surprisingly, it went pretty poorly. But we had set expectations to pick numbers based off of like her usual pace of training and what training was predicting. But we didn't factor in the fact that like the speed of meet day was going to affect her performance. Had we factored that in, we probably would have set slightly more conservative ranges for her third attempts to set her up better for success, to go 9 for 9 and have a better day, opposed to pushing as aggressively as we pushed. Or at least if we were pushing aggressively, we would have set the expectation that like, hey, this is going to be a fast day and it might not go how we hope it's going to go, so that they aren't as shocked or surprised about the results afterwards. So I think there's a lot of factors outside of just the X's and the O's and the numbers that you should be talking about going into meet day. And I'm really glad that you brought that up for the international team, that you talk about like accommodations and all the things outside of it, because those are important conversations to have. And as a coach, I've definitely been kind of like bitten in the butt from not having those. So.
Yeah, it's happened to me as well. You know, like I was handling someone at Nats once and they just disappeared on me into the toilet. And you know, I was like, where are you, man? And then he came back finally after like 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, we gotta go now, man. Let's go, let's start warming up. And he just kept taking his time. And we ended up like just barely making it to the opener, right? And we're just like super crunched on time, but he was really, really taking his time in between each of the warm-ups, even though I kept telling him, we gotta go. But yeah, I mean, he still ended up winning. But yeah.
That actually happens more often than not, honestly. Even at an international level, one thing I like to communicate is like, if you're gonna go somewhere, let me know.
Yeah.
Because like we just talked about, like staying calm under pressure. That's one of the things that really makes me panic.
Yeah.
When my athlete goes missing.
Yep. I have never been as nervous as I have been at that Nats.
But did they leave? Or like, what happened? Did I do something?
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. That's something I forgot about, but I do communicate that with like every athlete, either in that meeting or as soon as the day starts, of like, hey, if you need to go anywhere, let me know and check in with me first, because you know, like I'm trying to pace these warm-ups a certain way, and if you want to go to the bathroom but you need to take a warm-up in 2 minutes, I'm going to make you take it first, right? And then go to the bathroom, and then you'll be ready for your next warm-up before or in between attempts. If you go to the bathroom and you're like 5 lifters out or whatever, it's like, hey, like you know, like wait till after your attempt. Sorry, I hope you don't poop yourself, but you don't have time. You're going to miss your attempt if you go now, kind of thing, right? So I think, keeping pace with that, like making sure the day is timed out correctly is something that's like really important for meet day. And when the athlete disappears, it can really affect the timing. So it's really good to set that expectation. Yeah, it's very good to set that expectation.
And just to add to that as well, it's like sometimes when you disappear, just for the athletes to know, is a lot of times we're working in with people. So when you're gone for like 20 to 15 minutes, I don't know if I should wait for you, or like there's 4 or 5 people working in with this. Now the bar is at 220 and you haven't taken 120. So we need to start stripping plates, and I don't know where you're at. I don't know if we should move to a different rack. And the coaches are asking me, where's your athlete? What are we taking next? Like, I don't know. And it's one of the very few times where it's like, I don't know.
It's funny because I had that exact conversation before we were after weigh-ins. I was like, if you need to go somewhere, let me know. And then all of a sudden he disappears for 20 minutes. And then he comes back and he's like, CJ, I'm so sorry, man.
I had to poop.
He's just like, my stomach.
One thing that you brought up, Max, that I thought was really cool, and we can dive in even deeper about it, was just letting them know about food and things like that, and what kind of stuff that you want to eat. And this made me think of Sun City, South Africa, because you're on a resort that's far away from everything. So if you want to go get Uncle Ben's, you need to go to some part in town in Africa and try to get that. I don't know if that's worth it for you to do, or you can try to eat the local food and things like that. So insider information is really, really good. So as soon as I'm obviously, you should be the first person as a head coach that gets into the venue. Once you get into the venue, maybe send a screenshot or a picture of what the warm-up room looks like. What kind of racks are we going to be working on? Is it going to be crowded? Do they have the platform rack in the warm-up room? Just insider information like that. Or like in Istanbul, it was super hot in the warm-up room. Be prepared for that. And you're not going to know that until you get there. So a lot of stuff, like even like flights and things like that, you're not really going to know, especially at an international level, until it happens. Like a flight of 15 can be, or a group of 15 can be split into a group of 10 and 5. And that's just what it is. They decided after the weigh-ins, that's what they're going to do, because some people missed weight, and figure it out. It sucks. So be prepared for that. You thought there was going to be 2 full flights. It's not. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And being able to adjust and pivot to that, like on the day. I think as coaches and as athletes, that's a big part of like the fluidity of like, you might have expectations for one thing. Like you might have, like you said, planned for 2 flights of 12 lifters. And you're like, well, based on that, I should be pretty good to hit these PRs. But on the day, 10 people miss weight. And all of a sudden you're doing a single flight and the day is crazy, crazy fast. It's like, well, you kind of just need to be able to throw out the plan and adjust on the fly to what you're going to be capable of in the circumstances that you're given. And I think as a coach, the flexibility to not get so married to the plan that you're not willing to throw it out and do what needs to be done to be successful. And then as the athlete, kind of the same thing. I think often athletes will get so attached to like, I need to hit this number. I need to hit this number. It's like, great. Under normal circumstances, that was possible. Under today's circumstances, it's not. And I need you to be able to just be okay with that, because if you're going to let it discourage you, this is going to snowball into a worse and worse day. That mental flexibility to be able to just do what needs to be done to be successful on the day that you're given on meet day. And this is for all kinds of lifters. I feel like this stuff is more common with like international lifters, but sometimes you get sick 2 days before the competition and you show up and you're like so married to like, oh, I really wanted to squat 220 this day. It's like, you're in this now. You're gonna have to put that off for another competition. You're gonna just have to be okay with squatting 210 today because that's your target. And if we force for 220, maybe you end up with 200 or whatever on your second attempt, and it becomes a worse day, right? So that was like I had probably one of the worst preps ever going into like Western Nats in Moose Jaw a couple of years ago, and I got sick. I'm not kidding. 5 times in the 4 weeks going into the competition, including I competed on Friday, and on Monday I woke up and I had both diarrhea and vomiting 4 days before the competition.
Pick a battle, man.
Yeah, like, I was like, so I literally, and it was a pretty good meet for me. It was actually one of my best meets, but I had expectations that I just had to throw out on the day. And had I been married to those expectations too heavily, the day would have spiraled and I probably would have just like bombed out on the day. I had to be flexible with adjusting, being like, okay, maybe I thought I was capable of these numbers going into the day. I'm not, because I just shit out my brains and vomited for 2 hours, 4 days before the competition. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it to the competition, right? So part of what let me have that really good day was the flexibility that I did not marry myself to what I thought the day should have been.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think it's really important to, not set your expectations too high and understand that, hey, this is a different scenario and a different circumstance compared to training, right? We're not in my home gym anymore. I'm not lifting on the same equipment anymore. And I'm not under the circumstances that I normally would be when I go into training. So why should I expect that my training data should show up on meet day, right?
Yeah, and I think you're trying to make it show up the best that you can from like the programming side of things. But I do think it is very important to separate competition PRs and training PRs.
Yeah.
Because I think often people will be like, well, in competition, I squatted 260. Therefore, like if I want a PR, I need to squat 262 on the day. Whereas if like the most you've done in competition is 255 on squats, then showing up and hitting 257.5 is still a win. But if you don't separate those things and you don't have like realistic expectations in mind, it can lead to misses, which spiral to worse and worse performances. And I've definitely been there myself. It's easier said than done sometimes. But I think even like I said, even just like maybe your competition PR is 255, but maybe you get sick leading into the competition. Being okay with 250 or 252 or even 247.5 or 245, because that's what the circumstances you were given, it is a big part of like showing up as a competitor and an athlete. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All really good points, and a little bit different than like game day coaching, but I think all of this really still applies. And one thing that I want to add to all these points that you guys made is there's still valuable lessons to there. Like if you go into a meet sick, that's a really good experience to have, believe it or not, because now you did a meet where you were shitting and vomiting, and you know that you can go and have a good day while that's still happening. And that's a really valuable experience. And the next time that happens, you're like, okay, this happened. It might not be that bad. I've been there and I can turn this around. So I think that's really valuable experience to get. And it's not always just bad. And it's not just, oh, the meat's ruined. And even a really bad meat like that is a really good, valuable lesson. It can set you up for better meats in the future. And another thing was the meat PBs that you mentioned, and especially on an international stage, I really emphasize this, is on that IPF level, an international lift is completely different. You hit a lift under the strictest standards possible. You traveled, you had 3 different judges from 3 different nations with 3 juries sitting there, and you hit a good lift. It's
One spoke
completely different.
English.
Sorry?
One spoke English. The rest.
Yeah. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
Learn to communicate. You're like, don't talk for like 20 seconds, being super specific about how you want your hand off either, because the guy that's doing it might not speak English. So figure out a way to get it done.
That's a really good point, because as like a coach, I've definitely coached lifters into, don't get me wrong, I don't want them to give 20-second explanations, but something that I've talked about with athletes is like, hey, if you're going to give a handoff, you need to know how to, as succinctly as possible, describe to the handoff person what you need, right? Because it's like, hey, like, if you're always used to like a very soft handoff from your buddy in training, and all of a sudden the handoff person on meet day just lifts it up and like drops it into your hands, it's like those are 2 completely different things. So being able to describe that, but that's a level of international competition that I didn't even think about. Like that person giving you the handoff might not even understand English, and you might need to be able to like figure out how to
just like
communicate that into a way that it goes beyond, like transcends beyond like language barriers, right?
Yeah.
Or not take a handoff, which not always possible, especially with like equipped lifting. There's all kinds of elements to that.
Yeah,
but I guess it's a thing of like, especially with like raw lifting, of like, if you can get away without a handoff, it probably creates more consistency, especially at the international stage, but all kinds of things. And to loop the other stuff I was talking about into game day handling, I think it's important to be aware of those things as a game day handler, because as a game day handler, your job is to set the proper expectations for the athlete you're handling. And if you know that the athlete's sick, communicating to them that like, hey, this is going to change things is important. If an athlete has certain numbers in mind based on what they've done in training, but they haven't hit that on meet day, communicating to them that, you know, they need to have proper expectations is a part of game day coaching. And like you said, even beyond that, like international competition, it's like, okay, maybe you've hit 260 for a squat in competition, but it was at some local level meet, and now you're at nationals and the judges are going to be stricter. They're not going to let things fly. Communicating that of like, hey, like it'd be nice to hit a competition PB. That's great. But you also might just need to be okay with the fact of like, you're under stricter standards and you might squat less than you did in that local level competition. And again, you're going to have to be okay with that. So I think as a game day coach, like understanding all of these different like little nuances that go into game day handling, so that whoever's in front of you, you can communicate with in the best possible way to set the best possible expectations, is a big part of it. I also think that a big part of like setting expectations is goal setting and knowing what the athlete wants to get out of the competition. Like if they don't give a shit if they bomb out, as long as they're able to go for PRs, that's probably important to know, versus if the person's like, hey, I want to place top 3 at nationals and I want to do whatever it takes to do that. I'm okay with less numbers. I'm okay with whatever. I want to go 9 for 9. I want to have a good performance. I want to compete against these other athletes, and I want the day to go well. Those are 2 different things, right? Because if you have an athlete that like what their goals are means that a good day for them is going to be just going ham, going balls to the wall, and you're trying to like pull them back, be like, no, we need to be cautious. No, we need to be cautious. It's like, well, you're kind of not setting them up for success. Their version of success you might define as a stupid one, but you know, regardless, you're not setting them up for a good day, versus the other type of athlete that's in a head-to-head competition, wants to win. It's like, well, hey, if you want to win, you kind of got to be okay with some different expectations in order to do this. And I think beyond that, and you could probably speak to this a little bit more, Arshia, of like, if you've made a national team for an international competition, that choice is kind of taken from you in a way, because now you represent.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. You go ahead. Maybe expand on that a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. That choice is taken a little bit away from you, but I think you need to understand what the bigger picture here is. Like, it's cool to hit a PB, but we're there representing our nation, which is Canada, and we're there for team points. So if you tell me this is a PB and you want to go for a PB, and I don't think you deserve to go for that on that day, it's not going to happen. Like, I'm not going to put in a number that you're going to go out and miss, because at the end of the day, it's my ass that's on the line. I'm going to be the one that's like, why did you do that? Why did you put that attempt in? And we miss out on team points because of it. So that aspect of swinging and missing is taken away at an international stage, because there's so much more on the line. It could have been the difference of 3 or 4 points. Now Team Canada doesn't get a bronze medal because you wanted to go for a PB. So it's cool to hit a PB. I know you worked hard to come here to hit a PB, but at the end of the day, there's now a team aspect in powerlifting on the international stage, which is completely different than any other competition that people have gone to. So we need to be thinking about team points. We need to be thinking about placings from number 1 all the way to number 10. That's all going to give us points. And we're all going to get a medal for that at the end of the day. If we place as a team, everyone gets a medal. So that's really important.
I actually did have a follow-up question based off of that, just out of complete ignorance, because I've never had this explained to me before. But how do team points work at an international event? Like, do you get points for 10th, 9th? I'm asking this question because if I'm wondering it, I'm sure other listeners are wondering as well. But how do team points work at an international competition?
Yeah, so like 10th place would be 1 point, 9th place would be 2 points, and it goes all the way up. First place would be the most amount of points. So we want to try to secure the most amount of points. 5th place and up would be the points kind of spread out there. So we want to try to get as much points as possible. So it's not just about getting first, second, or third. Like, even if you're not in medal contention, you're still in a position to medal. So, or to get points for the team. So we all have a job to do there. And it's my job to make sure that we all hit points and secure the most amount of team points for Canada.
And I guess in that regards, if there's a lifter on a certain national team that isn't in contention for top 5 where they could get you points, assuming that like people don't just like bomb out or whatever, and that's how they end up in the top 5, do you give that athlete a little bit more flexibility to be a little bit more aggressive and hit PBs because it's like, well, you can't get team points anyways? Or is there kind of a level of like, this is the standard and it kind of just has to go across every single lifter?
Yeah, because I don't want somebody to look at the scoreboard and be like, why did Arshia do that?
That's fair.
Yeah, because like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I get it. Like,
yeah,
we also don't want to look like silly as a nation.
Yeah.
Like doing stuff like that, like hitting points or hitting lifts is good. We want to display good powerlifting and being like we're representing our country at the end of the day. You have that maple leaf on your chest and you gotta display good powerlifting and make it look good. And I think to me that's really important.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it does put your reputation on the line. So
yeah. And I guess in that regards too, like if you have a lot of athletes that aren't in contention for top 5 and they all bomb out because they want to be more aggressive or whatever, that's going to be factored in the next time you apply to be head coach of Team Canada, and you're less likely to get it. So it's like you're also kind of like working for a little bit of a job in a way as well. And it's like, hey, I do get that like this is your performance on the day, but in a way you're kind of working for me as the athlete opposed to like the local level for the athlete, right? Like at the local level, the coach is kind of working for the athlete, but at the international level, the athlete's kind of working for the coach, and they're kind of like an employee, because if that coach wants to get that job again, get that promotion, whatever is kind of going into it,
Yeah.
they need to show success. So it does
Yeah.
remove some of the autonomy, and it is kind of one of the things where it's like, hey, this is the cost of being at the international level, and
Yeah.
you can choose not to be part of the international level, or if you're like, I want to go for this PB, it's like, well, okay, register for another local level competition once you're back.
Yeah.
Go for it, right? Like you always have that option, right? Whereas you don't always have the option. Yeah.
That's exactly how I see it too. It's like I welcome him to the team, and I'm very honored to be in this position, and I think of it as this is my team, and I'm taking my team to the international stage, and I want you guys to perform at your best. Like I'm on your side. I want you to do the best possible you can. But if I start making stupid calls, it's my ass that's on the line. Like you can qualify for international level meets again and go, but if I start putting in silly numbers, then it's going to be like, why did he do that? But I just want to go back to a point, a question that you asked, and I have the exact numbers here, just to make sure. Okay. So first place is 12 points, and second place is 8 points. Third place is 7 points. Fourth place is 6. Fifth is 5. Sixth is 4, and it's so on and so forth, all the way up to 10th place being 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay, so it is 10. Top 10. So it would have to be a lifter outside of the top 10, which would mean that there's a lot of competitors in that class, which I would assume you probably don't see a whole lot outside of like open like raw worlds where there's like 30, 40 countries sometimes represented in a class kind of thing. But
like we all have a job to do there. We all contribute to that team medal at the end of the day. So swinging and missing doesn't really happen. Like you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think too, another aspect of it too is like you've earned that spot over another lifter, but other lifters would love to have that spot. And the fact that you have like one of those 8 spots, there's kind of like a level of like, there's an obligation that goes to that, because if you're not going to respect the obligations that come with that spot, another lifter would have stepped in that spot. They would have respected those obligations. And because you choose to be dumb and like cost your team points because you want to go for like a PB, which can't really happen. You know, there's another lifter that maybe they could have lifted like they didn't get that spot over you, but they have similar numbers. And had they had that spot, they would have like, respected those obligations more and got the team more team points. So
those conversations happen quite a bit, and those are tough conversations that you need to be prepared to have as a coach. If somebody tells you they want this, and I'm like, sorry, this isn't going to happen. And I have sympathy. I know that you took time off your job to be here. You put in a lot of work, and I understand, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for the greater good, I guess you can say.
Yeah, because you can always register for a local meet and do whatever you want to do, right? But when the Team Canada's on your chest, there's a certain expectation that comes with that because of the implications behind that. There's only 8 spots of people that get that. You having that spot takes it from someone else. There's team points involved. Like powerlifting is largely an individual sport until you get to the international level, and then all of a sudden you are vying for team medals, and also it does become a team sport where it is important. It's kind of the same thing as like the Olympics too, of like, they're trying to win team medals at the Olympics and they're trying to place in all these different events kind of thing. It's like there's something beyond yourself going into the competition after you kind of reach that international level that doesn't really exist prior to that. Outside of, I guess, like at our provincials and stuff like that, we have like the team award and stuff, but that doesn't feel
that's just top 5 too. And it's like, it's not everyone. And I think it's so cool. Like that part of it is like, even if you're 5th place, you contributed to that silver medal. Or 9th place. Like maybe we couldn't have done it if you weren't there. We were 2 points shy, and You got us that 2 points because you went from 9th to 8th.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it is a privilege at the end of the day. So I feel like as the athletes, you know, you got to uphold that standard.
Yeah. One thing I want to dive into here is what are some good qualities that you guys think a game day coach should have?
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be a good poker face, man. Yeah, you know, like I won't lie, I will be nervous when I'm handling, right? But I will never show it, right? Never ever will I try to show, or never ever will I show it. I make it very, very. I give a full effort to make sure that I project confidence, and that way the athlete understands that, you know, they're in good hands. They have trust in me, and if I'm nervous, they're going to be nervous. They're not going to perform the best, right? And then also there's that aspect of time management that I think is pretty important, especially when you start working and handling multiple athletes. You got to understand how to manage warm-ups, and especially like when you start to be a little bit more personal with timing warm-ups, right? Everyone is going to have a little bit different rest times in between warm-ups. So being able to essentially adjust for a multitude of lifters and all of their personal different warm-up timings, right? And be able to mesh them together so everyone gets the warm-ups in and is properly and adequately warmed up and gets to the platform in a good state of mind and state of performance, I think is really important. But yeah.
Yeah, lots of crossover with CJ. I would say like number one is confidence, having like I said, whether you're hype or whether you're calm, just having like that confidence and not being like nervous and projecting your nervous energy onto the athletes. Number two is preparation, whether it's your own athlete or somebody else's athlete, having the data, having, you know, the warm-ups ready, having the attempts ready, knowing how the lifter lifts, not waiting till the day of to figure all that stuff out, or like scratching it out on like a you know, the back of a napkin or whatever.
Knowing the rule book.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one, is knowing the rule book. This is something I see with a lot of like newer coaches. They'll show up to handle an athlete and they don't even know that there's like a 1 minute like timer for getting the attempts in, and you'll see a lot of athletes where they'll make their opener, they'll be like, yeah, super hype, and the plan is to go up 10-15 kilos, and then their handler spends 2 minutes talking with them about what their next attempt should be. They go to hand in the card and the table has to be like, nope, you can't hand this in, it's been past a minute, and that athlete has to go up by 2.5 kgs. So understanding the rule book, at least the base level of it, is kind of a big part, and the preparation, also understanding like what equipment it's going to be on the day. And then the other thing is just like timing, and that can also kind of like go into preparation, but understanding, you know, if the athlete, especially if the athlete's new and doesn't understand how to time some of this stuff themselves, some of it should be on them, some of it should be on you. But I think in the case of a new athlete, all of it kind of falls on the coach, of like understanding the timing of when they should be eating and coaching them. When's the time to eat? When's the time to start doing mobility? When's the time to get under the bar? When they should be like changing their, like putting on their deadlift socks, putting on their shoes, whatever, like when they should be changing, like helping the athlete time all of that. And then obviously the more standard level of timing that we're used to, of like timing the warm-ups properly and working in with the other coaches on the rack and being able to communicate with the other coaches so that the timing does go smoothly. And then timing, like, you know, the athlete of like, okay, for their attempt, when they should stand up, when they should get ready, when they should be chalked, when they should start wrapping their wrist wraps. Understanding the timing of that, because I've also seen the level of like the athlete doesn't know when to do that because they're new, and the coach doesn't know how to coach them when to do that. And they say bars loaded and the athlete doesn't even have their wrist wraps on. And then they're like in a mad rush and then they miss the attempt because they only get a minute. So timing is a big part. And I think obviously like the big ones we think about is like the warm-up timing, but I think there's timing of a lot of like really small things that go into meet day as well.
Yeah, all really, really good points there. And I would have pretty much said all of those things there. And I guess to take it a little bit deeper into it is really understand the rule book. And I think an important thing that every coach should know is the lights. Know why your athlete got a red. Like if you see a red and another red, know what that means. And and let's say you're at a national level meet, and some people have a different ideology than me on this. I don't like to always go to the jury. So if there's 2 to white, some coaches say they're immediately going to the jury. But if you see that's high and you go to the jury immediately, I don't want to be known as the coach that's whiny or not that the jury's going to think that. They're like, but again, I don't want them to think that, oh, here he comes again. It was obviously high. If you know why the red was and you see a red, you know that's depth and that looked high to you, then you should know that it was for depth. And if you go to the jury for that, again, one thing, it's like the jury's going to think, oh, here he comes again to complain. And then it's going to make your athlete think that it was an unfair call as well, which I don't think it's good to do. It's like, oh, my coach thought it was good. Why is he going to the jury? So understand the lights, and you shouldn't go and ask or complain at every lift. Yeah. Challenge it when it matters. Understand, like if you see a yellow or a blue, if you see a blue and you didn't see the bar go up and down at all, or you think it's fair to go and talk to the jury, then go. But if you see an obvious up and down, there's no point in going to the jury. It's going to make your lifter think that it was a good lift and it was an unfair call. It's going to mess with their heads, and the jury's going to be like, okay, this guy doesn't know anything. Here he comes again. It's probably the bad lift. Yeah. So, yeah, I think understanding stuff like that and the timing and things like that, know that you have a minute to put it in, or know you got 30 seconds to get off of the platform. Don't stand there too long. Don't stand there celebrating. So, yeah, I think all those things, and know how records work as well. Know how chips work. Like if you both put in 221, one guy hits it, know that it's going to be bumped up, or you know that it might be bumped up to a rounded number. And you don't really need to go ask those things like that, because especially at a higher level competition, the people are going to start knowing who the international coach is, and they're going to start putting some names to faces, and you don't want to have that bad reputation as being the whiny coach.
To add to that just a little bit as well, I think understanding like lot numbers and lot number advantage is a big thing on game day. For specifically head-to-head battles, it doesn't super matter if you're not in a head-to-head battle, but for head-to-head battles, it's super important to understand lot number and body weight advantage. And like sometimes you'll see like coaches that don't realize that their athlete has body weight advantage, and they weigh in lighter than the athlete that they're in a head-to-head battle with. They load the weight that they need to beat them on total by 2.5 kilos, when really all they needed to do was tie them on body weight in order to win. Or with lot number advantage, when it comes to like securing records or whatever, like understanding that if you have lot number advantage, you don't want your opener to be 2.5 kg under the other lifter. You probably want to bump it up 2.5 kg to match them, if that's an option, so that you lift after them. And so that whatever attempt you put in, you're always getting to see what they get to put in first, and being able to choose your attempts based off of that. Or if it comes down to a record, like specifically if you have lot number advantage and you and another lifter are both going for the record, you want to put in the same number, because if the other lifter gets their attempt, you automatically get the 0.5 kilo chip added to your attempt. And if they miss the lift, then you get to take that number. Whereas if you don't understand the lot number advantage, and you were to put in the 1.5 kilos more when you could have just put in the same number and got the 1.5 kilos automatically if they missed it, or not having to take that extra half kilo if they do get it, kind of thing, or if they do miss it. I think those kinds of things are important to know, at least for head-to-head battles. If you're handling kind of the athlete number one type that isn't in a head-to-head battle, those things are definitely much less important. It's more important to understand like the 1 minute rule and the lights and the different colors, the blue, yellow, and red cards kind of thing. Those are more important. But specifically for head-to-head battles, lot number advantage, body weight number advantage, some of those little more nuanced rules can be important.
Yeah. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add there?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive.
All right.
I think so.
Final question I got here before we wrap it up. What's your guys' thought on, does every coach need to both be able to be a good programming coach and game day coach?
I think not. I think it comes down to personality as well. Some people cannot handle the stress that can be caused by game day handling, right? And they just simply cannot do it, right? To a confident degree. So a lot of the times that, just ends up making the trust gone, the confidence gone, and the athlete performs worse, right? And so in those sort of cases, it's probably better to just allow another person to game day coach them, right? And this works vice versa too. You don't have to be a programming coach if you are a game day coach, right? There can be that separation. And you see people like Matt Gary, who are these specialized game day coaches, but not programmers, right? Yeah.
So, like, the obvious answer is no. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a level of like the answer is also kind of yes, though. And I'm going to kind of explain why. I think in the current climate we have, if you want to be a full-time coach, you probably have to do some things that you don't enjoy doing in order to make a living, right? I think that's kind of fair to say. If you want to hyper-specialize in programming, that's probably a little more likely that you can make a full-time living doing that and just have other people handle your athletes if you don't want to do it. There's a lot more coaches making full-time living in that space. As far as making a full-time living from just game day handling, it's Matt Gary and Matt Gary alone right now. Like, if you want to be a full-time coach, you kind of have to do some level of programming, even if you want to specialize more in the handling stuff. Now, that being said, you could work at Walmart part-time and then do the game day handling thing. And maybe in 5 to 10 years, maybe the sport will have grown enough that you can become a full-time game day handler and specialize that. And that's great. But probably in the meantime, if you want to be more involved with the space, you probably have to be doing some level of programming. And then back to the programming side of things, even though it's more likely that you can make a full-time living by doing just programming and having other people handle your athletes, most people aren't handling super high-level lifters. Usually to get into programming coaching, you're having to work with local-level lifters. And there's going to be some level of like, if you're not handling your local-level lifters and you're having somebody else do it for you, why? Right? Like there's valid excuses. I'm not saying that there's not. Like me, for example, like I work with mostly local level lifters and I don't handle a lot of my lifters. It's because I'm not around a lot of the time. I travel back and forth between Missouri and Canada, and there's a lot of times where I have an athlete doing a meet in Calgary and I'm in Missouri, I'm in the US, so somebody else has to handle them, right? So I'm not saying that, but it's like if I'm in Calgary and my athlete in Calgary is competing in Calgary, why am I not handling them, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different levels to it, but especially like if you want to build a better relationship with that athlete, you should be there for them on their meet day if you can be there for them. 2, from a like marketing and kind of like exposure perspective, one of the best ways to get new athletes, if you're that local level coach, is to be seen coaching athletes and going to a local level competition and coaching your athlete and having them have a really good day, and having 5 other athletes without coaches see you coaching them and have them have a really good day, getting to meet those people, have conversations with them, get to network. There's a lot of advantages to game day handling. So I would say that you're probably also not going to make it as a full-time programming coach, barring you already have a large social media. You get lucky, you get a super high-level lifter that like helps you like get a whole bunch, like you're getting athletes in some other type of way, right? You're probably not going to make it full-time as a programming coach unless you are showing up to those meets. So the answer, I do think, is exactly what CJ said of no, and I probably lean more towards that side. But I think the reality of the climate that we're in right now in powerlifting, with just where the sport is at, the answer for probably 95% of coaches is yes, though. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, actually. Yeah. And I also think it's important that as a programming coach, you probably should experience it and understand the process of how a meet runs. And that can also help you instill confidence and make certain programming adjustments to better suit your athlete for game day. Exactly, right?
Programming adjustments as well as like conversations, right? Like if you think about like what's the difference between like working with like me, well, like the one of the 3 of us as a coach, or having ChatGPT write your programming. The big difference is the relationship stuff, right? And we could go down a whole loophole of like if ChatGPT could do this, but like let's just compare like just a program to coaching, right? And it's like right now I work for Strength Now, which just released a bunch of like different programs and stuff like that. It's like, well, what's the difference between going and buying Steve's Strength Now program or working with one of the 3 of us as a coach? It's like, well, buying just a program doesn't come with conversations. As a coach, we offer experience. We offer things of like preparation. So even if you're not handling your athlete on meet day, having the conversations of like what they need to do in training to best prepare them for meet day, what they should be packing with them, like all of these different conversations that go into the athlete for making sure they're as prepared for meet day as possible, is part of the like reason people hire a coach opposed to just buying a program. And if you've never handled somebody on meet day, you don't have the experience needed to have those conversations and coach them through that. So it's like, it is okay, I do think, to have a preference of one or the other and to want to specialize into those. But I do think to some level, in order to specialize into one or the other, you do kind of need to be a generalist at first to learn the skills needed, as well as to build up the reputation to be able to build into one of the specializations. And again, if you want your specialization to be handling and you want to make a living, unless you have some other kind of job that's supplementing that income, your job is probably going to be writing programming for the income. And then on the other side of things, like if you're a programming coach, it's like, unless you work with just like top level lifters where they're always having like international coaches like Arshia coach them anyways, you're probably showing up for some of your local level lifters competitions. And if you've never coached a competition before, like you've never game day handled before, you're probably going to be a pretty shitty game or a pretty shitty programming coach. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys hit all the points there. I think that was pretty spot on. And yeah, I think you don't need to do it, but why not? Why not learn? It only adds value to your coaching, and it adds that insight, and you're able to put yourself in that lifter's shoes a little bit better, and it offers guidance. And I do think it's respectable if you're not that confident and it is going to be a head-to-head meet, you reach out.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this person knows game day coaching. I trust them, and I'm gonna refer out for this meet. So I do think there's that's very respectable. But why not learn? Why not start learning and going to some meets and things like that? Because it's part of the sport.
Yeah.
If you're coaching powerlifting, game day coaching is part of powerlifting. So why not learn?
Yeah.
And I think you
And
could
it's
put
fun.
yourself in. Sorry. I think you can put yourself in some like really good situations to referring out, right? So I'll just like give an example kind of thing. Let's say I have two athletes competing at provincials in the same session. One is in a head-to-head battle and one isn't, right? So
Yeah.
I have two wristbands. I'm allowed to have two people in the warm-up, right? So maybe I don't know head-to-head coaching all that well, but I know that Arshia does. I think it's very respectable to say, hire Arshia, have him come help handle, and learn from Arshia in that game day sense, working together. I know there's some little like nuances to it. Like, let's say you only have one athlete in the session, you only get one wristband, so you kind of have to choose between whether like you coach them yourself and you learn kind of trial by fire, or if you put that athlete in the best possible situation, which I think is kind of the more like, if you care about that athlete, you probably want them to succeed. And you probably don't want to just like have them lose just because you wanted to get the experience. The more responsible place is probably to hire somebody that knows what they're doing a little bit better.
It's almost like mentoring in a sense.
Yeah,
or that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, if you do happen to have two wristbands where you could be in the warm-up room and you can bring that handling coach that has more experience into that session with you to help you handle both athletes, and you can kind of like learn from them and what they're doing, that's a good way to kind of get that like mentorship experience that's not always easy to gain because of the wristband rule. Obviously, the other thing being like equipped lifters, right? Equipped lifters get two wristbands instead of one. So if you're somebody that has less game day experience and you have an equipped lifter, you can be there to be like their wrist wrap person or their knee sleeve person, their knee wrap person. I'll get there one day. Their knee wrap person, and you could be there, but you could also have that person that's better with the numbers to help mentor you and teach you that aspect of the game. But it is, I will say that it is hard to get that experience, because if you have one athlete and they're in a battle, you're kind of faced with a choice whether you do it yourself or whether you get somebody with more experience to do it. But if you are in a situation where you do have two wristbands and you can get experience from bringing somebody more experienced in, that is an invaluable opportunity. So.
100%. Yeah, I think that's bang on. I think we touched on a lot of good points here. Might have missed on a few things. I think we can go on and on about game day handling. So if we did, feel free to drop us any messages, or I don't know, do people drop it in the comments still? Is that a thing?
Maybe.
Does that happen? Okay.
Maybe.
Do that. Put it down there. But yeah. Do you want to sign us out here, Max?
Yeah, for sure. If you guys are listening on Apple, Spotify, any of those things, please be sure to give us high ratings or low ratings if you absolutely hated this episode. Please don't. Please be generous to us. We're new. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, like Arshia said, drop a comment, ask us any questions you have. And if you are interested in coaching, you guys can hit us up in the DMs on Instagram. My Instagram is Max Hall Fitness. You guys want to drop your Instagrams for people?
Yeah, my Instagram is at @RSHADY__, and you can also find us at northrise.ca.
And my Instagram is CJ_THAKURI.
Cool. Yeah, hit us up on Instagram. Other than that, guys, peace out until next time.
See ya.